Welcome everyone to the EOS Life, an intimate discussion about living your ideal life. My name's Mike Paton. I'm a longtime EOS implementer, and I'm here with my friend and mentor Gino Wickman, the creator of EOS and the founder, with his business partner Don Tinney of EOS Worldwide. We're here today to go deep with Gino about his latest passion project, the publishing of the book, The EOS Life. I'm going to start the conversation, and we're also hoping that you'll submit your EOS Life questions by using hashtag EOS Life on any social platform. I'll do my best to work them into the conversation. We're also planning to host an exclusive live virtual Q&A with Gino on September 23rd. So if we don't answer the question you have today, you'll have a chance to do that yourself next month. Gino, thanks for agreeing to appear on this interview with me, and I'm really looking forward to talking through this with you.
It is a pleasure. I am very much looking forward to this, and you just make me smile looking at you, listening to you talk. So as I always say before we begin every conversation, Paton, my brother. So
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So let's start at a high level if we can.
Yeah.
What was it that inspired you to write this book?
Well, for starters, I swore I would never write this book. So after the first 5 EOS books in the Traction Library and selling the company, I wasn't going to write it. And then I urged many other implementers to write it. And it just wasn't getting written. And then a pandemic hit, and I was no longer on a plane every 3 weeks. I was not in a hotel room 40 nights a year, and so I just had this excess capacity. And I truly believe it was a calling. I mean, I was just kind of called to do it. Something just hit me one day, and I said to myself, I got to write the EOS Life book.
Yeah.
And so Kelly and I talked, Kelly Knight and I, and there it was. And so I just took my August sabbatical, came back on September 1st, and started writing.
Yeah, and if I recall, you told me that book flowed out of you in a way that you haven't experienced before.
The way I describe it, it flowed out of me like water. I mean, it literally the words just flowed. And I wrote that book in 3 months, which is warp speed. They normally take about 1.5 years. I mean, it was just all right there. It was just a matter of channeling it from wherever it comes from and getting it on paper.
When you're in the flow. It's always
and
fun.
I most certainly was.
So walk the audience through what the EOS Life is at a high level, please.
Yeah, sure. So, AKA, it's living your ideal life. And so it's all about how to live your ideal life. And we came to call it the EOS Life, and we'll get into some of that backstory, I'm sure. And so the way that we defined it was with 5 things that Don Tinney came to describe them. And so the EOS Life is doing what you love with people you love, making a huge impact, getting paid well for it or compensated appropriately, and then 5 is having time for other passions. And so Don so masterfully kind of put that all in a nutshell. And so that's the EOS Life in a nutshell.
Yeah, and so for whom was the book written?
So just like everything that I do in this realm, first and foremost, I'm always focused on helping that visionary entrepreneur become a better entrepreneur. And so that's, why I work, what gets my blood pumping. And so first and foremost, it's that visionary entrepreneur. Secondarily, it's that entrepreneurial leadership team as well. And so I want to, in one fell swoop, say the leadership team, which would include the visionary, but I do lead with my passion is if I can get that visionary right in their head, everything else is right. And so for me, it starts there. But then it's bigger than that, because for the entrepreneurial leadership team that is savvy enough and lives this life, it's for every single person in that organization, because they all have the opportunity to do those 5 things. And then their family has that same opportunity. Right. But it starts with that visionary entrepreneur. And so I don't want to put a percentage on it, but the majority of it is the focus on those leadership team members.
Yeah, so two things to unpack there. So first of all, we've talked for 15 years now about how unfortunate it is that so many people who start and run entrepreneurial companies aren't living their ideal lives.
By the way, I'm having a great time already, Paton.
Yeah, that's good. As am I, Gino. So you're driven by a desire to help the entrepreneur because too many entrepreneurs are feeling like they're not able to live their ideal lives. And then the second point I want to unpack a little bit in this conversation is when the entrepreneur, the founder, the visionary isn't living their ideal lives, it's awfully hard for anybody else on the leadership team or in the trenches to live their life in the way they want to live it as well. So talk about why you see so many entrepreneurs feeling stuck and overwhelmed and trapped by their business.
So when you say why, I feel like I want to answer it a little bit different, and I think I'm answering what you're asking. Yeah. And so it really stems from, what is it that I saw that made me so passionate about wanting to spend and devote my life to helping entrepreneurs? And so I'll try and tell it as fast as I can, but it started with taking over a family business. And it started with helping my visionary entrepreneur dad, who's just a flaming visionary, pure entrepreneur, built an amazing empire. And I ended up taking that business over when it was in need of a turnaround. And so I spent a total of 8 years turning around, running, and selling that business. And so it was 8 years of being the integrator to my visionary father and realizing that I have a knack for this. I'm good at this. I'm good at reining this crazy energy in, harnessing it, and and ultimately, putting that entrepreneur in their sweet spot. So that's part one. That was the experience that I realized I loved and I was good at, but there in no way was it, I realized it was a passion or something I wanted to teach or do. And so the second part of the story is then when I was about 27, I think, plus or minus a year, I joined YEO, the Young Entrepreneurs Organization, now known as EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization. And I was one of the original 10 members of the Detroit chapter. And so two guys are the founders of the Detroit chapter, and they wrangled and rounded up the rest of us, and we basically kicked off YEO Detroit at the time. And so what happened there is it was an incredible experience, but about a year and a half into that, one of the parts of EO is you're meeting with your forum every month. And so here I am, I'm meeting with, ultimately there were 12 of us. We met every single month. And a year and a half in, listening to everything that they were dealing with, so I'm going to do everything in my power to not use profanity on this interview. But when I'm quoting someone else,
I think
you're
that's
allowed
okay.
to use profanity. And even when you're quoting yourself, you're allowed to use profanity. So a year and a half in, here I am looking at these 11 other peers and realizing, and so this was the aha, I went in my head, wow, these guys are as fucked up as I am. And so my mind went, opportunity. So I just saw opportunity, because then what I found myself doing is helping my EO brethren. And so I had a knack for helping my dad, I had a knack for helping them. And so that's when I realized, and then the last little part is, right around then, I got involved in Strategic Coach. Dan Sullivan is a very important mentor in my life, and he ultimately put the finishing touches on me realizing my unique ability. And so that's when I realized that's what I am here to do. And upon selling the family business, transitioning out of the role over a year and a half, I just jumped in, leapt in with both feet to go help people get what they want from their businesses.
Got it. Is living your ideal life always something that's come naturally to you, or have you had to learn these disciplines yourself?
So I have to give that some thought. So most of me wants to say yes when I think about the first four. So I think I've always been pretty good at doing what I love and the things that I'm great at. Not that in my 20s, it was perfect, far from that, but I was always savvy enough to stop doing something that wasn't fun to me and go do something that was fun. And so I was pretty good at doing what I love. With people I love, I was pretty good at that as well. In terms of choosing the right people, I was always really good about staying away from poisonous people. Making an impact, I think I always did that to a certain degree. And then getting paid well. I've always made money. I've always been really good at making money. And we get to the fifth one. And the fifth one, there was never time for other passions because my passion was business. My passion was all of those things I did in my 20s. So I was just terrible at that from a standpoint of having a personal life that involved passions. And so I just worked, man. In my 20s, I just worked until I had a light bulb moment. So I would say yes on the first four was always kind of natural. Fifth one, not so much. I needed a wake-up call on number 5.
Yeah, and so tell us about the wake-up call, because I think that might be my favorite section of the book.
Yeah, and so I always confuse the ages a little bit, but I'll do my best to recall. And so when my daughter was somewhere around 4 years old, and again, I'm guessing as best I can, and I was probably somewhere around 28, plus or minus a year, I was getting in the car, getting ready to leave for work. My car was in the driveway, and she comes out of the house, and before I shut the door, she comes over and she stands right here. And so I've got the car door open like this, and she's right there, and she looks up to me and she goes, "Dad, are you going home?" And I was like, even right now, it's like, oh my God. And so that was the light bulb moment that, wow, man, I am screwing this thing up. So again, obviously she did not think I lived there because she never saw me there or rarely saw me there. And so I said, "No, sweetie, Daddy lives here. This is my home." And so anyway, so that woke me up and changed, how I live the personal life.
And so walk us through the thing when realizing that you needed to get better at setting aside time for other passions like your family. What are the things you learned to do that helped you live your ideal life and be there for Alexis when she wanted you there?
Yeah. I wish I could give you specifics. So all I can do, the best way to answer it is shoot forward in time now. And I know all of my passions, and they're all so simple. And so assuming we get a little deeper into that a little bit later, for everyone out there listening, your passions, it doesn't have to be heli-skiing. It doesn't have to be parachuting.
Right.
So my passions are very simple. I love going to the movies with my wife.
Yeah.
I love going for walks. I love going for a bike ride. I love traveling. And so it's really simple stuff. I love being with my family. I love being with my friends. I just relish those moments. And so those are the things that I'm passionate about. I love to read. And so these are all simple things, but I make time for all those things. Yeah. And so again, when it comes to the kids and when it comes to that aha moment, if they had events, I made sure I was there most of the time. It's not like I made them all. Right. I don't know that I would win a Father of the Year award, but I believe my kids do love me. I believe they do respect me. You'd have to ask them, but I think they think I'm a pretty good dad. We love each other very much. We spend a lot of time together. So I just made sure that I spent time, on their stuff with them. Anyway, hopefully that answers it.
Well, and I've had the pleasure of meeting both your kids several times, and they appear to not only love and appreciate you, but they want to emulate the way you live your life.
No, that's nice.
That's my observation.
That's
so
nice.
Kudos to you.
Yeah, I'm the only one screwed up in the family. Everybody else is really healthy.
Well, and Kathy has texted a number of questions she'd like me to ask, so that's coming in a little bit. So, the vast majority of the entrepreneurs in the world and leadership team members may be listening and saying, that all sounds great, but I'm already overwhelmed. I'm living a crazy busy life. Mm-hmm. I always feel like I could give more time and energy at work and to my family. And how do I do this? isn't this selfish?
Yeah.
So talk to the mind trash that exists when listeners are sitting there thinking, I don't know if I could even attempt this.
Yeah. So that prompts two big thoughts. One is, I'm trying to decide which one should go first to make this message most impactful. And so where I would start is with what I call moving the needle, okay? And so the book goes into great detail on this and helps you measure your progress, and you'll see this visual and example about moving the needle. Because, let's pretend you out there, on 0 to 100, you're at a 0, okay? And that's okay. So at least you know where you are. And I'm trying to get you to 100, which you're never going to reach. Yeah. But I'm trying to get you as close to that as possible. I'm probably at a 93, and I'm pretty good at this stuff, So the point is, you just got to move the needle. And so in the next year, if you just move that needle from a 0 to a 10, or let's pretend you're at a 28 and you move that needle to a 35, your life just got better. And so that's the first thing is you can't flick a switch and be living the EOS life. It's a process, it's a journey. Mm-hmm. I'm a fanatic about teaching the world 10-year thinking. So stop thinking about tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. Think in 10-year time frames. And in 10 years, you can be absolutely living your ideal life. So just focus on moving the needle and being patient. The second thing that comes to mind is about feeling worthy. And so what I realize now in writing this, in the conversations I've had with the test readers, and the reaction that what I'm about to say gets, it's about worthiness. So that the biggest barrier that I think is stopping people from living their ideal life, from living the EOS life, is they don't feel they deserve it. Yeah. They don't feel they're worthy of it. They feel it's selfish. They feel guilty. Yeah. And so what I always like to say, and I'm going to say it into this camera for you out there listening right now, you deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve it. And what I love is every time I say that, there are tears. Yeah. Because people just don't feel they deserve it. And I don't know what that, I want to use the F word so bad right now, but I promised I'll try not to. But that thing that has us so effed up in our brains, I don't know what that's from. Typically it's something from when you were 7, but you deserve it. Yeah. And so those are the two biggies. And when you get past that, go get some therapy, do whatever you have to do for self-worth. But once you realize you deserve it, and you're just focusing on moving the needle, and again, I show you how to do that in this book, that's it. And in 10 years, you're going to be one happy dude or dudette.
Yeah, lots of people feel like it's their lot in life to always be chasing the van down the highway trying to get back in the driver's seat.
Yeah, but even worse, they were raised in... I almost swore again. I'm doing so good stopping myself.
I just want to remind you, you've already cracked the seal, Gino.
I'm not. They're raised a lot of times in misery. In other words, that's all they know. Yeah. So guilt and misery and all that stuff.
And perfectionism, going back to the just move the needle, like the fact that you can't get there tomorrow isn't a reason to not try.
There's like 17 words you can put into misery. Everything from perfectionistic to thinking you're unworthy to whatever it is, to sulking, to being, overly dramatic. I don't know, but it's all fits into misery.
Thank you. Just a quick break. Just want to remind the audience that as we're talking about the book, The EOS Life, it's on sale now for pre-orders at www.theeoslife.com. It's scheduled for launch on September 21st, which is just a few short weeks away. And please help us make this interview interactive and serve your needs by submitting your EOS Life questions using the hashtag EOS Life on any social platform. We'll do our best to work them into the interview. So I want to talk about the 5 disciplines involved in living your EOS life one at a time. Let's talk a little bit more about doing what you love. Give me a sense, give our audience a sense of what that feels like and what that doesn't feel like. How will they know whether they're 100 or 0 in that category?
So, as I go into this, we call it the EOS Life because our EOS clients end up living the EOS life, okay? And the reason they live the EOS life is because the way I like to say it is we have tricked them into living their ideal life.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a backstory on that, and I promise I'm going to come back to answer your question. You might have to remind me what the question is, but there's a reason I'm going all the way to this context to answer your question. So after 5 years of creating EOS, 5 years, 50 clients, 500 sessions, I call it pulling levers. I tested, honed, refined, ultimately put the finishing touches on EOS. Joined forces with Don Tinney, my amazing business partner. We decided to rebrand what was the Business Accelerator, now known as EOS. And so I engaged a real high-end marketing company. And what we decided to do, what they decided to do and urged me to do, is we picked my 7 best clients. We called them the Magnificent 7. And they then went off and interviewed each one of those clients separate from me. They came back with the results after a couple weeks, and the result, the outcome, was truly shocking to me, because I thought they were going to come back and their way they were going to describe their life in EOS and all this stuff is that, the business is growing faster, we're making more money, we got all the right people in the right seats, all these business related things. And the owner of the marketing company says 7 out of 7. They all maybe said it a little bit different, but 7 out of 7 had the exact same answer. Right. And they said the number one benefit of EOS is that I have a better quality of life, a better balance of life. I have a better life. Now, so we get that result, we hear that, and I was like, okay, got it. Let's just please rebrand this thing and let's get back to focusing on business. So it was actually Don many years later that kind of brought it back. Right. So I just totally missed it. It went over my head. But the point I'm making here is, with EOS, we take you through a process. We have you implement 20 tools into your business that helps you run a business like a Swiss watch. And secondarily, helps every one of those leaders live their ideal life, live the EOS life. So in answering your question, 1 or 2 high gain things about doing what you love, or as you said, how do you know you are?
Yeah.
So we have a tool that we teach called Delegate and Elevate, okay? And the whole quick discipline is just to list everything you're doing, put all those things in one of 4 quadrants. And the main quadrant we're focusing on is all the stuff that you love to do and you're great at. So simply put, loving great, pay attention to the things that you're doing all day, every day, and be aware of the ones that you love doing and you're great at doing. Yeah. And be aware of the ones that you don't love doing and you're not great at doing. So I know that sounds simple, but it is literally that simple. And through that awareness, you're going to find yourself gravitating toward the stuff that you love to do. And these, again, the tools are all in the book, so it's all there. But then I take it one step further because, if you're a client, we're forcing you to fill in every one of those quadrants. This is, you're actually putting this in print, so you're staring at this tool so that you clearly see the love and greats, and you're working toward that. The idea is to then delegate and elevate everything in the bottom 2 quadrants over time. And so what I would leave you with on your question is just simply delegate 1 thing per quarter. If every leader out there, whatever camera I'm looking in, if every leader out there would just delegate 1 thing per quarter with this awareness, don't delegate the stuff you love to do and you're great at, you are going to wake up 10 years from now doing stuff you love that you're great at 80% of the time. Last little point, using me as the example, and I put it in the book, so I'm going to share it here, and that is for 25 years I have delegated 1 thing per quarter. So everything you're going to read in this book, there's no theory. This is what I've done, and I've helped thousands of people do. So every quarter I've delegated something 25 years, and I have 30x my income since I started doing that 25 years ago. So there's no coincidence. The more you gravitate toward that quadrant, the happier you're going to be, the more money you'll make. And so there's my long answer to your short question.
And it was a great answer. And where I want to go is
Paton.
step 1,
let's
Gino.
Sit on that for a minute.
Quit touching my
sit
foot,
with
will
it.
you?
I'm going to touch your foot a few times today.
So isn't step one getting back in touch with what it is you love to do? What I'm watching is we're all so busy and so tired and so overwhelmed, and the business needs us to be great at 27 things. A lot of leaders and entrepreneurs out there get pretty good at stuff that they don't really love doing, and they lose track of what it is really drives them and the reason they started the business in the first place. Are you seeing the same thing?
So I'd say it a little different. What I would say is it's not linear. You know, the 5 things are not linear.
Right.
So it's not like start doing stuff you love and you're great at, and then work on this one, and then work on this one. And so you'll see how I teach it in the book, because there's a visual I illustrate, and it's these 5 circles around you, and you're working on all of them, because I would suggest for one person, they need to work on number 2 right now and fire a couple bad eggs and bring in some great people, so that you're doing it with people you love, and it's those 2 people that you don't love so much that are preventing you from doing the stuff you love and you're great at. So the point I'm making in that is it's you need to work on all of it a little bit, and what I'm getting you to do is once a quarter, just pick one little thing to do for this one, one little thing to do for this one, and then you're moving that needle. And then worst case, if you can only do 1 out of all 5, you know, sometimes it's number 4, sometimes it's number 2. So no, I would not look at it as first start doing the stuff you love and you're great at, and then work on the next stuff.
Well, let's talk about number 2, because it is all interdependent. Sometimes the reason you're stuck doing stuff you don't love doing is you don't have anybody else in your organization who you can trust to do it as well as you. So talk about surrounding yourself with people you love. What's in the way of making that happen, and what are some thinking tools to help make progress?
Right, so this is why I did that really big context at the beginning, so that I could keep coming back to the tools, because again, God, that makes so much sense to everyone. You know, let's do this with people we love. Well, with EOS and the EOS process, as we're taking you through that as a client, we are tricking you into surrounding yourself with people you love. So what's happening with that is we're first tricking you by getting you to discover your core values, okay? And some people don't like the word trick, so I'll try not to use that too much. But the point is, you don't really know what's going on. In other words, you're my client. I know exactly what your life's going to look like in 2 years, and that's what motivates me to work with you every single quarter. So we start by getting you to discover your core values. And once you've done that, you now have this awareness of these 3 to 7 characteristics that define who you are at your core. And then we get you to create an accountability chart and create a bunch of seats in your organization. And then we pull it together by saying, okay, are every one of your people that you're surrounded by inside your company, do they all have those core values? People analyzer. And are they all in the right seat in that accountability chart? Get it, want it, capacity. And so at the end of that, it's so abundantly clear, people start to get fired. I like using the word fired, and I will use it for the rest of my life. See the laws in your states. And there are people that will leave, and so that's all good stuff, because then they're being replaced by all the right people in the right seats. And the people that get fired or go away, it's not that they were bad, it's not that they're evil. This is just not the place for them. This is not the culture for them. And so they're going to go somewhere and thrive, just not here. And so what's happening is, again, for lack of a better term right now, the bad ones go away, the ones that didn't fit, great ones come in, that are the right people in the right seat, and all of a sudden you look up in your 100-person organization that once had like 20 bad eggs that were dragging the whole thing down are gone, replaced by great people, and now everyone they're all just people you love. And I don't know if you're going to go here, but I'm going to start to go here, and you tell me if you want to. But I would suggest that that's step 1. That's the easy part. Like, I can help a company do that in their sleep. Our 400 plus implementers around the world can help a company do that in their sleep. You can read traction and do that in your sleep. Now, I'm making it sound overly simplistic. It doesn't feel that easy when you're going through it as a client.
Well, and that's what, you know, there's nobody on the planet better at mind trash than me. And so for the people out in the audience saying, well, that all sounds very easy, Gino, come on. How do, especially today when it's so hard to find and keep great talent, help get those people thinking positively about their capacity to do that.
Right, and so with that, I want to be careful not to go too far down that road, because The point I want to make is that we trick you. Those tools are what help you all of a sudden look up and realize, wow, I'm surrounded by great people. So I can live with disbelief right now because I don't want to go down that road unless you want to go there, because I'm happy to go down the road. But now all of a sudden we're getting into EOS and we're out of the EOS life. And I fear, we lose some value in the point we're trying to make. But bring me back to it after I make this next point.
You bet.
I want to see if this is where you're going next, because what I'm saying is, okay, that's the easy part. Now, maybe the better word is simple, because it isn't so easy. But now you're there, and let's pretend your 50-person organization now has 50 of the right people in the right seat, and you just love being around these people. That's step one. When you get there, then I urge you and teach you how to then widen your circle. Because when I say do it with people you love, I'm talking about all aspects.
Right.
I'm talking about try that on for a minute. So now picture all of your investors, vendors, customers, clients, anyone that touches your business. You run them through a people analyzer and make sure they have your core values. Yeah. And they get it, want it, and have the capacity to be involved in this thing you're creating. Yeah. And then let's expand it even further to your personal life. And let's take a look at all the people in your life. Are you surrounding yourself with people that align with your core values? The litmus test is always when you spend an hour with someone, do you walk away from that hour feeling uplifted, energized, happy, fulfilled? Or do you walk away feeling less than? Yeah. And sadly, most people walk away from those conversations, those get-togethers, feeling less than. Now, you can't fire every family member. You can fire every friend. You certainly can get divorced. That's how you fire your spouse. But nonetheless, if you really understand the power of that,
or your spouse fires you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. But that's the message I would love this audience to hear, is the possibility. And again, just move the needle. Yeah. Move the needle. You're about to, one of you out there, I should point to this camera every time, right? It's usually here, but one of you out there, tomorrow, you are about to go have a drink, have a coffee, have a lunch with someone that is going to make you feel like shit. Why in the F would you do that? See, I didn't say it. Cancel that meeting.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, and I think the reason I wanted to talk about that is simply to provide some data that when you create awareness about a gap between the way you want to be surrounded by people you love and where you are today, and you prioritize the things that are slowing you down, pissing you off, or holding you back, and you agree to do something about one of those things this quarter, you will start making progress towards living your EOS life.
Yeah.
You, again, go back to your 10-year thinking. You don't have to get there tomorrow, but we've seen over and over and over 11,000 companies using this system that they're able to get there. And, my clients change out. I have multiple clients whose leadership teams is completely different 3 years into the process than when they started the journey.
I now have 8 clients that the Visionary has replaced every one of the team. They're all gone. The leadership team we started with, they're all gone.
And most of those people are in better places, not as part of the leadership team. They didn't,
much better
they
position.
Didn't belong to.
And by the way, the people that went away, I still talk to some of them, and they're happy at a company that they fit with a visionary that they fit with. So it's all good. People going away is good. Firing people's fun. Have fun with it.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about making a huge difference. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you, or what does that mean to an entrepreneur? And what's the technique or the tool used to get you there?
So the easiest tool to understand this is the VTO. So if you're out there and you're a leader and you're struggling with how do I make an impact, see your VTO. And it's probably in the core focus is the best place to look, but it's all over that VTO. Yep. So the way that a company makes an impact on the world is by executing what's in their VTO, their Vision Traction Organizer. And every leader on the leadership team has that same opportunity where maybe they're impacting their department, or their division or their team. And so start with the VTO. But there are other opportunities to create an impact in the world. And so an example is, there's this great quote, and I can't remember, you may know who this quote was from, because it was Kurt Schneiber, one of our EOS implementers, that stood up and said this at one of the quarterly collaborative exchanges. And it's the quote that says, "You are not a leader until you have created a leader who has created a leader." And so I find that statement to be so profound, and I don't know that I'm quoting it perfectly, but the gist is in there. And so if you think about that, I cannot consider myself a leader until I have created a leader, until I've coached, mentored, guided, and got someone to the level that they consider themselves a leader, but they can't consider themselves a leader until they have done the same thing for someone else. Mm-hmm. So quick math says you're about 10 years away from creating a leader or considering yourself a leader if you're just starting today. But the point in that is, you want to talk about impact. Talking to a visionary entrepreneur out there, talking to a leadership team member out there, you have potential leaders all around you. And if you could turn one of those people into a great leader who can turn other people into leaders, just imagine the impact on the world from that standpoint. But then it could be as simple as, going and getting on the board for your favorite charity. I mean, there's so many other things. But the simplest answer and the quickest answer is look at the VTO and get really passionate about the impact that your company is having on this world. But there are lots of ways to make an impact.
Yeah, and I see clients who are really passionate about their profession, and they want to be the best on the planet at that. And whatever your definition of the impact is, find it and work hard towards it.
And again, remember, we're talking about moving the needle, so don't feel like tomorrow you're going to figure out what that impact is going to be. I hope that's the case, but sometimes it takes you a little time. Yeah,
and I'm sure you've had this too. Sometimes having the conversation with your leadership team and spitballing what it is that gets you out of bed every morning and why you come to work doing what you do every day reminds the founding entrepreneur why they started the business in the first place. So don't be afraid to ask for help is another point. Let's talk about being compensated appropriately or being paid well. In the book, you talk about having to remind yourself that it's okay to do work you love and get paid well. Why is that so hard for so many leaders?
I feel the need to touch your foot again on this one.
Touch away, Gino. I
finally broke
I will be okay. I may need a cocktail if you
now
keep
you
that
want
up,
me to
though.
touch your foot. See how I shifted your thinking? So getting compensated appropriately is the way that Don worded it. It's getting paid well, and it's being comfortable making a lot of money. I haven't met too many people that don't want to make a lot of money, but it's all relative. So for one person, $50,000 a year is getting compensated appropriately, and they're very happy. And for another, $5 million isn't even close to enough. So there's no wrong answer here. So you have to decide for yourself what compensated appropriately means. Simply put, if you're sitting out there and you don't feel you're making enough money, then you're not being compensated appropriately in your mind. And so let's pretend you're making 50 grand today, you want to make 100 grand. You got to start to move the needle in that direction. Well, the way you do that is by creating value. Okay, and so it's all about value. And what you have to ask yourself is, if you're sitting there making 50 grand a year, and you're not getting to 100 grand a year, and that's the appropriate conversation you want, look at the value. And if you're, so I'm trying to do the fast math on 50 grand a year, and what is that? That's like $25 an hour, right? Doing fast math, I think that's right.
That's about right.
Look at what you're doing, because you're probably doing $25 an hour work. And there's nothing wrong with that. Make it $15 an hour, $35 an hour, $1,000 an hour, all appropriate. But if you're doing $25 an hour work every day and you're wanting to make 100 grand a year, something's got to change with the equation. And so look at the value. And so let's pretend we're talking to that visionary entrepreneur in their company and they're not generating enough profit. Look at the value you're providing the world. You are probably not providing enough value to the world. You're probably not providing enough value to your customers and clients. And so really look at that. You need to charge more. You need to sell more. There's something broken there. If you're a leadership team member, again, and you're stuck at 100 grand and you want to make 200 grand, grand, you're probably providing $100,000 in value. And so how can you provide $200,000 in value? How can you provide more value to the company? And then again, if you're a machinist standing in a machine making $35,000, you want to make $70,000, figure out how to add more value. Right. So I don't know if that makes sense, if that helps, but that's my fastest answer.
That does it, and that works if you're employed, a leadership team member, or own your own business. How can I create more value to the people who are compensating me?
You know, and sometimes it's always easiest to use a salesperson as example that's on 100% commission, because that's how you know you're creating value as a salesperson. If you're not making any money, you're not providing value.
That's right.
If you're making $1 million, salespeople are the highest paid people on the planet. If you're making $100,000 a year, it's because you're adding value. And again, so that's the best way. You know, it's the best way to look at it, because if you have a salaried job, it's a little amorphous and hard to get your arms around that. So I always like to use that salesperson example to maybe help it click for someone. So add more value. If you're not making enough money, add more value.
What role does the risk-reward equation play in the thinking about appropriate compensation? That's one of the things you mentioned learning a lot about in your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. Well, I'm reminded of this visual that my dad taught me when I was like 18 years old, 18, 19, 20, somewhere in there. And he said, picture this glass tube. Okay, and it's in the shape of a U, and on this side is risk, and on this side is reward. And he said, if you pour fluid into this side or that side, it's going to go in there and it's going to fill up equally. And so the point in that is the higher the risk, the higher the reward. And that has been proven now for at least 10,000 years of human history. And so those that take bigger risks tend to get bigger rewards.
Yeah,
so that visual is sometimes helps it click.
And sometimes the way to create more value in the world is doing something for someone that's never been done before, or experimenting with the way you're doing your job every day that might increase productivity or reduce defects, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you're doing it the same way you've always done it and expecting to get paid more, that's not going to work.
Here. And I would also suggest that, again, if you're making 50 grand, 100 grand, 250, you want to double that income. To double that income, it is going to require some level of risk. It's not going to be real comfortable. And most people don't like to get uncomfortable. And so that discomfort is risk.
Got it. One last thing, I thought for sure you were going to quote Dan Sullivan in this conversation about being compensated appropriately, but I run into a lot of business owners, business leaders who are uncomfortable charging an appropriate amount for the value they are creating. And
well, to quote Dan Sullivan, see how I did that?
Yeah, very nicely.
So I think you're talking about this. And so, you know, for me, I'm thinking about that individual. So we go to a company that's charging for their product, and a visionary entrepreneur that's got to make this very tough decision. What am I going to charge for my product or service, right? Yep. So Dan's formula is to pick the number that scares you the most and add 20%. So that's his rule of thumb, which is pretty damn spot on.
And when you're creating real value in the world, don't be afraid to charge appropriately for the value you're creating.
And just like as an EOS implementer, when I started out, my daily fee was $1,500. So every time I would raise my fee about every 2 or 3 years, I would be like, God, why didn't I do that sooner? Why? Because nobody balked. I didn't lose one client. So I always kicked myself because I never went all the way to scary plus 20%. Yeah. I was doing more like 10% under scary.
And every time you do it, you have that sort of fear that you know, maybe.
Worst case, if you got it wrong, you go out of business. Hey, sirrah.
Risk reward. All right, let's talk about time for other passions. How do you figure out what your other passions are, and how do you set aside the appropriate time to pursue those?
So I'd say a couple of things here. You know, so again, just be aware. So, you know, a lot of this just starts with awareness. So once you say, you know what, I need to start thinking about what my passions are. I need to start allocating time to passions. think about things that get you excited, that get your blood pumping a little bit. You know, it might be working on cars. It might be, anyway, we can come up with 1,000 things right now. Bike riding like it is for me, whatever it is, just start to be aware of those things and then try a bunch of stuff, you know? So it's just moving the needle. If you think you're passionate about collecting stamps, go try collecting some stamps and you might decide in 6 months, this really sucks. And so then go try something else, try something else, try something else. My belief is that most people already know some of the things they're passionate about. Right. So it's actually more about a formula. And again, the tool that we trick you with in EOS is called EOS time management. And so what we're doing at that point in the process with a client, when we're looking at the accountability chart complete and we illustrate a seat, we're saying, okay, here comes EOS time management. So all you have is 100% of your working time. And so you get to decide what that is. And every company's different, and it's typically cultural, but let's hypothetically pretend a person decides, I'm a 50-hour-a-week person. That's the time I want to commit to work in my profession. The idea is to then protect that. And any time the capacity ball starts to fill, you got to delegate and elevate and get back to that 100%. So it starts with you deciding what your 100% is. And so I'm a 55-hour-a-week guy. That's my rule of thumb. I've got clients that are 35-hour-a-week people, and I've got clients that are 85-hour-a-week people. Again, it's all cultural. It's all fine. There's no good or bad here. But at least now you know your 100%. You know how much time you're going to devote, which that means every second over that 100% is devoted to your personal life now. And so a lot of times it's just freeing up the time, making that commitment to decide your 100%, protect your 100%, free up those hours to now go do the thing you already know you're passionate about. You've just not made it a priority, and you've been a prisoner to your business, and your 100% is this ever expanding amalgamation of time that you can't get your arms around.
Yeah, two interesting personal experiences I want to talk about there. So number one, some of us are sort of card-carrying workaholics by trade. And so I had a very similar painful experience with a family member where it was clear to me and everybody in my family how much harder I worked to serve my business well than I was willing to work to serve my family well. And so I had an aha that said, I don't need to sacrifice my commitment to my business. I need to make as big or bigger sacrifices for my family as I'm willing to make for the business. It needs to be equal. And I think we all get into this habit of thinking our family will and should understand, whereas our clients or our coworkers don't. Have you seen other people, or is that just me being somewhat of a mess?
Well,
I was hoping for a different answer.
My mind goes in a few different directions on that, and I'm a little fearful that I'm going to say something that's going to be misinterpreted or captured, because, you know, if you're a visionary entrepreneur and you just took your entrepreneurial leap in the last 2 years, you're going to be stuck. A pretty busy woman, okay? Or a pretty busy man for a little while here. And you need a family that is supportive of that, because you're probably not working 35 hours a week in most cases. But please understand, you can start a business and work 35 hours a week. So you need a family that supports that. You need a spouse that supports that. And so let's pretend you do. In that case, assuming you have a supportive spouse, then you probably do need to make the business a high priority for a little while. For the long run, so I always had a very supportive spouse. Kathy is, I mean, she has held all the pieces together for me, you know, at home. But again, I had my aha. I carved out a lot more time for home, don't get me wrong. But I want to be careful, because hearing your question, I fear that, you know, that visionary that loves working 65 hours a week, there's nothing wrong with that if the spouse supports it, if the family supports it, because there's still plenty of time to do great stuff at home and live your passions working 65 hours a week. That's a little intense. I would never do it. So it's kind of all relative.
That's right.
So I would just want to be careful with how you ask that. So everybody's answer is different.
Yeah.
And then that's the other thing is you may have a spouse that is not supportive at all, wants you home constantly, wants you working 25 hours a week, and that's just not an option for you. Then you got a whole nother conversation to have there.
That's right.
And I promise you there is a spouse out there that would support you working, 55 hours a week. But it's a decision you have to make. Or you got to decide, you know what, honey, I love you. I'm going to work 25 hours a week for you. That's for that's for that relationship to decide what works best for them.
And that was a very helpful answer because that was part of the problem, for sure.
Is there something that you'd like to share
Well,
with me?
actually, we're going to take a break, and when we can, no, we're not going to take a break.
Is Kate about to call in?
No,
Is there something that I need to?
So here's my second thing. So when people hear time for other passions, I think there's a little competitiveness. You mentioned this earlier. Your passions are your passions.
Exactly.
But I see people all the time where there's one member of the leadership team who's into heli-skiing or mountain climbing or, being one of the first passengers to go to a commercial flight to Mars. And so those of us who are passionate about our family and recreational reading and sitting on a beach doing nothing sort of feel like we're not living our ideal lives because we can't compete.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. That's so dangerous. So, one person can have a passion for race car driving, and another person can have a passion for gardening. Those two things look very different in action. Okay, so it's a choice.
Yeah.
So this person is getting energy, is filled up, is in heaven doing their gardening. This person is filled up and energized and happy race car driving. So it's not like the more you're risking your life, the more you're living a passion. There's no formula, there's no scale that measures it that way.
Well, and without any thrills involved, I have a good friend, no kids, who's constantly saying to me, hair on fire, visionary, well, Paton, when do you take time for yourself? Well, my passion happens to be watching my 11 and 14-year-old boys play soccer. I get tremendous joy from seeing them enjoy a game that I also love. And to him, that feels like I'm obligated to go do that thing. And so it's nice to hear you say, if it brings you joy, it's a passion, lean into that.
Now, and then I probably shouldn't say this because my kids may stop loving me after I share this, but this is what's cool about what you said, because I had utter disdain for going to my kids' sporting events. There's nothing about it I love, but I go for them because it's important to them.
That's right.
So I didn't do that out of passion. I did that out of, relationship, staying married, because it was the right thing to do. But I didn't get anything like what you got. Sorry, Alexis and Gino, wherever you are. But they already knew that. Kathy already knew that. But I knew it was the right thing to do. So we're all different. And so if you're out there and you're saying, I just really don't enjoy going to my 8-year-old's basketball game, you're not crazy. That's not bad. But you should probably do it.
That's helpful. All right, we're about to change the context, and so I'm going to make a quick announcement. So first of all, I incorrectly identified the website earlier. So if you want to provide questions or if you want to learn more, please visit www.eoslife.com. www.eoslife.com. Also, please remember, on any social media channel, if you hashtag EOS Life and enter a question, we will work it into our conversation. So please do that at your earliest
convenience. And one more thing to add, because this is my OCD kicking in. I'm trusting Pam caught it, but the Q&A that I'm doing in a month, he did not explain correctly. And EOS Worldwide's going to have a holy hell world of shit if you don't fix that right now. So, do you want to fix it or do you want him to fix it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I plan to do that in a little bit, but that's fine. There is a qualifier for participating in the live Q&A. You need to order 100 copies of the EOS Life, half off the hardcover price, and you'll be issued a special invitation to that live Q&A.
So if you want to know how EOS was created, it was from this OCD and this fanatical attention to detail. and I just see the disaster that was potentially created, and so I wanted to head it off at the pass.
Fair enough.
I'm very uncomfortable correcting that.
Well done.
But that's my genetic encoding.
Well, and I'm quite used to that over the last 15 years. Just so the listeners hear me say this, when Gino says, I've been delegating and elevating 2 things from the bottom quadrants for the last 15 years. Most of them were delegated to me. And so the temple in my, the nerve in my temple is throbbing. All right, I want to change course a little bit and go to the origin story, the history, the context here. So there are people watching that don't know your story well, and you've already kind of given us a high level, but when did you make a decision to share what you were experiencing with your clients, your EO brethren, with the world? To walk us through that journey to make that decision.
Yeah. So let me just think for a second here how far back I'm going to go. So as I already shared, family business, EO, AHA, saw the opportunity, saw the need in the world, and then decided that's the need I'm going to go fill. The company that we sold was a sales training company in the real estate industry. So my dad had created the #1 real estate sales training company in North America, an incredible company, impacted hundreds of thousands of people. We had 50 trainers in that company, and I managed those 50 trainers. And so when I took my leap, my plan was to be little old me, working directly with entrepreneurs, making a huge impact on their life, and I swore I would never build another company again, let alone a bunch of cats to herd like crazy trainers, i.e. EOS implementers. So I was just going to go do that thing. But what's also important is Mike Paton, my guardian angel, a guy who's had an amazing impact on my life, gave me a book to read, The Monk and the Riddle. And in that book is about this person that works directly with CEOs. And he came to call himself a virtual CEO. That's what I need in my company. I said, that's what I'm going to go do. So there I am. That's what I went and did. And so for 5 years, I did that. Like I said, 50 clients, 500 sessions, put the finishing touches on EOS. And then here I go, I was called to do this. And so in my book, Entrepreneurial Leap, I talk about how if you're a true entrepreneur, you can't stop yourself from building a company. So I just couldn't stop myself. So here I was in Southeast Michigan, making an amazing living, making a ton of money, had this incredible balanced life, making such an impact on all these entrepreneurs and their companies and their leadership teams. And I was just at a crossroads, and I said, so what do I do? Because I could retire off this thing so nicely, have this amazingly balanced life, and just ride this thing out, or do I leverage it to the world? And I was just called to leverage it to the world. And when I did that, I then sat down and bullet pointed out on a piece of paper 15 characteristics of the perfect integrator partner that I need, which ultimately became Don Tinney, which ironically was sent to me by my guardian angel, Mike Paton. And then the rest is history. So Don and I came together. I decided to put it out there. I decided to put it all in a book called Traction. And then we went to work on finding crazy EOS implementers like you and I and Don.
Don, in the foreword to the book, which is phenomenal, by the way, introduces himself as the second EOS implementer, and I think Renee and I are 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What were some of the biggest struggles you and Don had to overcome in the early days on your journey to live your ideal life?
So the first one that comes to mind is finding these perfect EOS implementers, these perfect people, these beings, these balls of energy that could sell, could teach, could facilitate, were entrepreneurial, were fascinated about being inside of the black box of an organization. And so you are one of them. And so we found you. And so it was finding them because it was excruciating in the first couple of years because we would bring in anyone that could fog a mirror at first. And it was so brutal, so brutal. And so I can't remember how many we went through before we found you. But when you came into my session room during boot camp and I was teaching that boot camp, if you remember the first break, we were an hour and a half into boot camp. I was an hour and a half into meeting you. And I knew your energy 3 minutes into the day. And if you remember, I grabbed you and I said, I'm never letting you go. I knew you were going to be my successor. I knew you were going to kick ass at this thing. And so I don't know if you remember the words. I can't remember the words. I just know, again, the conversation energetically was that I am not letting this guy go. I'm attaching to myself.
I was trying to hit the panic button on my cell phone. I couldn't
because you thought it was a cult. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was actually asked if it was some sort of Al-Qaeda cell. I was headed off to join.
You're asking the biggest challenge. So the biggest challenge was finding implementers because the other thing was, so what happened with Don is when Don and I joined forces, I said, Don, you have to go out and you have to reproduce all of my results and you have to prove somebody else can do this. And if you do that, come back to me, let me know, and we will join forces and we will become business partners and we will build this thing. So he went out in a year and a half and he reproduced every single one of my results. And so then it was Don and I building this thing. And then we had some rough ones, and it was really brutal because it was a year and a half of just mediocre people. And so when I saw you, that's why I latched on, because we needed someone other than Don to be the example. And so you were the person that we were able to hold up now and say, you could be a Paton, you could be a Paton. And everybody wanted to be a Paton. And so,
and if the implementers are listening, please set your sights higher. That would be
And just for the record, Paton as an EOS implementer, not Paton. I'm just kidding.
You had a being compensated appropriately crisis that you had to solve too. A couple years in, you and Don recognized you were beating your heads against the wall, not getting compensated appropriately for the value you were trying to bring to the world. So walk us through that.
So as every entrepreneur experiences, we had to change our business model. So the original plan was not the final plan, as is the case with every business. So we were a year and a half, 2 years in. It wasn't working. We were generating no money. So the only money Don and I were generating was as EOS implementers, because we still each spent half of our time EOS implementing and making damn good money doing that. But then we had this business for a year and a half, 2 years that made no money. So sitting in a Starbucks during a clarity break, I read Starfish and the Spider and Tribes by Seth Godin, and I was poring over all the data points about this model not working and everything we had, and then I had my eureka moment. I left that Starbucks, I called Don, I said, Don, I'm about to turn our business model on its ear. And then he sat quietly and I did a 15-minute riff and I finished my riff and he goes, Gino, I love it. And so what we did is we just shifted the model to a total open source abundance-based model. We took all of those shaky implementers and we just flipped it to you pay a monthly fee to play with us, to be in this thing. And it was crazy affordable. So the original model was to pay a percentage of all the revenue that you guys generated. You weren't generating a lot of revenue as a whole, so 50% of zero is still zero. So it was 15% at the time. So anyway, we shifted it to that. And I don't know if you remember what you said to me. So then I go into our quarterly meeting, and I think at the time we had 15 implementers, was probably the number, is my guess. And I'm doing the presentation of my life. And so I'm guessing that presentation was about 30 to 60 minutes long. I unveiled this new model to those implementers. I rocked their worlds, but for the successful ones. And then you came up to me at the break and you said thank you, because again, at the time, you were generating about $400,000 a year. You were paying us 15% of that. All of a sudden, you were paying us about $30,000 or $40,000 less with what I proposed. And you said, thank you, Gino, you just bought me a car or something like that.
That's right.
So anyway, so you were happy, but that model, literally, the whole business turned on a dime after that, and it just absolutely exploded.
Well, and what I love about that story is it's tied to the create more value. Because I think what was
for sure
what it looked like to me as somebody who was the beneficiary of that business model is you were already creating tremendous value for me, and I was certainly happy with the revenue. But what you were saying to the world is, if what we give you that's been proven to deliver value to other EOS implementers isn't paying dividends for you, then you've made the wrong choice.
Exactly.
But you asked to be paid appropriately for the opportunity that you were created.
Yeah, and also, I mean, but just look at, we don't have to get, I mean, we're going so deep into something that is not about EOS Life, but so I'll just say this last point, you're in charge here, I'll go wherever you want, but then think about what that then attracts when we say you got to pay to play. So the day you come here, you got to pay to go through our boot camp. And then you got to pay something every single month.
That's right.
So all of a sudden the commitment level went through the roof.
That's right.
But get ready. I said I poured over all the data points in the decision I made to change the business model. One of those 100 data points was Paton's making $400 grand a year. So I was able to say, if you want to be a Paton, so we had one or two or three of you that were relatively successful to say, look at, Don and I are successful at this. These 1, 2, 3 are successful at this.
Right.
And so I was able, if I didn't have a you, I couldn't have changed the model.
You were able to point to the value creation possibility.
Yeah, and most of the people we're bringing in, you pay 15% of the revenue you generate. So there's no risk, because if they don't generate any revenue, they don't pay anything. That's going to attract everyone under the sun, because delivering the EOS process to a company, there aren't many things better. It's so much fun, but it's really hard to get to that client and get in that room. So anyway, tangent alert.
No, that's good. Switching from challenges to successes, what were some of the flagship moments where you thought, oh, the flywheel's turning, we're on to something here?
Well, certainly you recreating Don and my results was really big. There's another moment we describe. So the original 4 were Don, Amber, Lisa, and I. And for, I'd say a year or two, Don and I would set these lofty goals. So in our quarterlies, we'd be setting these, and I don't even want to call them lofty. I thought they were very doable, but we never hit them. And so the way we describe it is the day that Amber beat all optimism out of Don and I. She pulverized us and made us pessimists. And so the second we kind of changed the goals to be more realistic, we started hitting them every quarter, feeling successful. So there was also a lot of momentum in that. And so we always jokingly pick on Amber for beating all optimism out of Don and I. And then the other, the thing that really surprised me is, the overriding goal from day one was to impact 10,000 companies, was to take 10,000 companies through this process. And I never would have guessed achieving that goal, which my goal, I set it 20 years ago, to be hit by December 31st, 2020, and we literally hit it with 1 month to spare, which is shocking. So message for all of you out there, setting 10-year targets, they work. 5 to 30 years, mine was a 20-year. But I never would have guessed, so I saw 10,000 companies and that's it, and a bunch of implementers. I never could have imagined how freaking valuable that was. How many people that was truly going to impact, because I never guessed that 10,000, we implementers taking 10,000 companies through the process translates into 100,000 companies. So I never would have guessed the impact. And so when I started to see that, that was, so those are some of the things that come to mind.
Cool. One of the things you talk about in the book is the power of mentors and helpers and people who can help illuminate your way. Who are some of your most influential mentors along the way?
Yep. So my big 3, so there's kind of like the big 3, and then there are all of these influencers, if you will. So the big 3 are right at the top of the list, my dad. My dad is my greatest mentor. And then I call these 3 people my 3 greatest mentors because it's so close. It's like a really close second and third. Number 2 is Sam Cupp, my business mentor. And then number 3 is Dan Sullivan, who to this day is still my mentor. Sadly, Sam Cupp has passed away. My dad has retired, but I still, we still have great conversation. I still have his ear. But Dan Sullivan, I'm 24 years later, I'm still in his program and still learning something from him every single 90 days. For any entrepreneurs out there, get in the Strategic Coach program. It'll change your life. It changed mine. So those are the big three.
Got it.
And then there's a bunch of influencers, and I list these in the book because prior to creating EOS, because the EOS influencers are Jim Collins and Pat Lencioni and Vern Harnish, and certainly Dan Sullivan's in that list, and so many rich authors and books that I learned from to create that. But before that, and I think more important than all of them, are the influencers that created my philosophy and how I live my life. And so these are the Jim Rowans, Earl Nightingale, Napoleon Hill, Les Brown, and I'm trying to say them all, Michael Gerber. So there's the big three, and then there's a whole bunch of influencers that, I'm a fanatic for learning, and I just study these people.
And I may be wrong when I say this, but every time I hear you walk through that list, all of them have a gift for reconfiguring the way the neurons are firing in your brain to think about the world in a different way that opens up possibilities.
Yeah,
and that's something I've learned to emulate from you, that if you're not constantly expanding your ways of thinking, you're going to get stuck in a rut and feel like it's not your lot in life to step out of this thing.
Hear, hear.
So you made a couple key business decisions that were really driven by a desire to get back to living your EOS life as the founder and visionary for EOS Worldwide. And the first is stepping down, as you predicted you would, by your 50th birthday, and the second is to sell the company. I want you to talk about the EOS Life influence on those decisions.
Yeah. So I want to share three things there, and I'm just trying to pick the right order there. So I never intended to sell the company. It was never on my radar, never of interest to me. And most of the teaching out there is that, that's not entirely smart. You always want to, see the outcome. And I have a different philosophy around that. So I won't get into that, but I never intended to sell the company. The company was always just an extension of my neuroses, It's a pretty good thing.
Of which I am vividly aware, just so we're clear.
It has benefited you greatly, so hallelujah. So never intended to sell it. But always intended to be out of it. So again, this well, because as we started to bring on implementers, and we met every quarter all those years, I would say in every QC almost, I would say, I'm going to be sitting back there with all of you someday as an implementer, because at the end of the day, I'm just an implementer, and I don't want to be the visionary of this company. But I had to step out of being an EOS implementer to become the visionary to get this company to where we need to get it. And I said, but someday I'm going to be sitting right back there with you. And so the thing I always did know is I was going to get off that leadership team, get out of the visionary role, and just be the owner of the business and the majority owner. And I was just going to sit back, be an owner, and let you guys run it forever. So that I knew. And then to your point about, how does EOS Life play into it? So let's go to loving great. Yeah. I didn't love being the visionary of the company, but I was pretty good at it. Okay. So I would say I was probably great at that, but I didn't love it. And when I weigh all the other things that I wanted to do business-wise, and being an EOS implementer, I love those things. So delegate one thing every quarter. I literally got to the point that if I wanted to spend 100% of my working time in my sweet spot, I had to delegate an entire company. Because no matter how you slice it, I realized even if I got to the owner's box fully and out of the visionary seat, which we did, and we ran that way for a couple of years, So I experienced it.
Yeah.
I got to say it this way. That fucking company was on my mind every
day.
single night. So it just weighed on me because while you guys were solving all the issues, and again, you can attest that I let you run that damn company, I still knew every issue and they weighed on me. So I had to delegate that off to free up my energy for the next thing. Yeah. And so that's when I realized it was time to sell. And we actually got approached. I'm not going to say who approached us, but it was them approaching and me having those thoughts that I said, you know what, it's probably time. Yeah, and I would have never guessed the company was worth what, or it's my point about getting to 10,000. I would have never guessed it was so valuable. And that's not why I sold, but that wasn't bad.
So what I love about that is you just shared a planned move and an unplanned move, both of which led you to getting closer to living your EOS life.
And so thank you for that, because that's the point is if I'm living my EOS life, you can't perfectly plan everything.
That's right.
But it drove my decision. It was a no-brainer. When you look at it through that lens, it's like a no-brainer.
And the driver of that second decision, the unplanned decision, was you coming to grips with the fact that you thought stepping out of the visionary seat was going to create peace for you, and it didn't. And so there you are back at your journey to live your EOS life, and there's more work yet to do. And so that's what our listeners are going to experience themselves. You can't figure this all out right now. You have to take it one step at a time. So any regrets along the journey, Gino? Anything you wish you had a do-over on? Touching my foot? Yes, I thought so.
I don't regret that. I hope the audience is enjoying as much as I am. So this I've been asked many times. I don't know that I have one. So maybe Kathy will text something in and give a list. But I mean, I've been asked this. I do the same thing every single time. I don't know that I have a regret. I mean, I'm sure if I tried really hard, I could make something up for you, but.
So here's a question. Here's a question from Lori from Michigan. I suspect it's Kathy.
Yeah, right.
What has been the hardest part about living your own EOS life? What do you struggle with the most?
So we're moving off regret.
We're moving off regret.
Got it.
Because I've tried to ask you that question 20 times.
And if somebody out there knows something I regret, send it in and remind me. But so I'm sorry, what is Lori asking?
Lori is saying, what's been the biggest challenge about living your own EOS life for you? What's hardest for you?
So what's hardest is how good it is. I don't know how to answer that question. What's the hardest? So that's okay. I love it because I'm going to say something positive and then I'm going to say something negative because, the positive is living it. You're an example and other people want to live it. And so you draw people into it that want to live it. And so that is really fulfilling. The one negative are the envious ones, the dark energy. So they aren't real nice, but I've so learned to just tune them out.
The ones who think it's all
No, I wouldn't even say that. They're just jealous and mean and ugly and ugh.
Got it.
So they just
Got it.
bless you.
They're trying to erode the I am worthy and I deserve to live my EOS life.
I don't know what it is, and so I stopped trying to figure it out. I just get away from them.
Good for you.
Just get away from them because they're not very nice.
Thank you, Lori from Michigan.
Thank you, Lori.
Really appreciate that.
That was good.
Again, it might be Kathy with a list of suggestions on the regrets comment. We'll see. The end of the book, there's a mini book.
By the way, and it's the envious, jealous, dark energy ones that are the ones that are fucking with your head that make you not feel worthy, that the second you say, hey, you know what, honey? Hey, you know what, pal? Hey, you know what? I think I want to do this. And they just fucking suck you right back in.
That's not right.
Pull you right back in. And I've heard it described as they have hooks in you, and they just pull that hook, and they just keep pulling you
Yeah,
back.
they're just trying
it
to
breaks my
yeah.
heart.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart because I see it every single day, and it just breaks my heart.
Yeah. And I think not trying to figure out why they're doing it is a smart play, because you get sucked in even deeper.
And I'm thinking about every one of those son of a guns.
All right. End of the book, there's a little mini book.
There you go,
on the
Pam. You got a couple tears. All right, you wanted a tear. There was a little tear there.
So, it's about human energy, which is a recurring theme. I've been hearing you talk about human energy for 14 years, every quarter, ad nauseum, and it's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
And the reason it's fascinating is because you believe it can and should be managed. And I think a lot of people feel like it's uncontrollable or inert. Mm-hmm. So when did you first begin to tune into this idea of human energy? When did you start noticing how valuable and important it was to notice human energy?
So at first I was going to tell you I don't know when it is, but as you were asking that, and I went somewhere else with my ADD, an answer came to me. And I'm trying to remember the name of the book, and it was very, very popular 30 years ago. Oh, Celestine Prophecies.
Oh, yeah.
It's that book that made me look at myself and human beings very differently. And again, sort of, who knows what you believe, but I think we're all just balls of energy. And I think it's kind of like scientifically proven that we're balls of energy, but I'm not smart enough to understand all that. And so if you see yourself that way and understand that you're just a ball of energy, you can actually harness and direct that energy and increase that energy. And so what you've heard me say for 15 years is how what EOS is it's a system for managing human energy. Mm-hmm. So that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're doing for our clients, is we're helping them harness the human energy in their organization. So if you have a 10-person company, 50-person company, 500-person company, we're going to show you how to harness all of that energy into one direction where everyone's energy is going into one direction. So that's what you've heard for 15 years or 14 years. You now reminded me of where it all started for me. Then what happened is, so I included in this book, so the EOS Life book and the EOS content and what I wrote there is EOS Worldwide's content. They bought it from me. So it's their content. It's theirs to take to the world. I own the book. We're this amazing, great relationship where together, we magnify things. But what I decided to do with this book is, up and over that, I added this mini bonus book to the book that's called 10 Disciplines for Managing and Maximizing Your Energy. And so to complete the story, what happened is I was trying to decide what my keynote was going to be for the EOS conference 2 years ago. And it's just a crazy way how the message comes to me, but it just hit me that that's what I'm going to teach. And I'm going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to tell the world how I manage my energy. And so it's 10 disciplines. Yeah. And so the final piece to the puzzle is I literally then started thinking, and I started just writing, what are all of my disciplines for how I manage my energy? And just these 10 were so apparent. And then I delivered that message, and the reaction was incredible. And then I decided to put it in this book, because again, it's a little uncomfortable putting it in there because it feels a little selfish that I'm teaching how I do it. But the reaction, so I had 80 test readers on this book, which is the most ever. But the reaction from 80 out of 80 to those 10 disciplines, I just knew there was something there. And so I decided, what the hell, I'm going to start teaching the world how to manage and maximize their energy from this humble opinion.
So this may be unfair, but can you walk us through the 10? High level, real quick?
No, but I can read them to you.
Thank you.
Because Listen, maybe it's because I'm 53, but I can't remember them in this order. But just really high level, and then you tell me where you want to go with
Sounds
these.
good.
But very high level, we already touched on the first one, and it's 10-year thinking. 10-year thinking is transformative. It will change your life. Time slows down, there's a peace that comes over you, and ironically, you get there faster. Taking time off, and so we indirectly touched on that, but this is about truly taking time off and recharging your batteries and really understanding the power of recreation, recreating yourself. Number 3 is know thyself, so really deep stuff here, but I like to say, let your freak flag fly. And so figure out who you really are. Be that every moment, and your energy will go through the roof because you're pretending you're somebody different in every case. And then on this one, and do you want me to go a little deep in each one, or high level and then go deep?
High level and quick.
Yeah, so I'm trying to hit each one quickly. But there's a story I tell about this one in my aha moment. I just touched the microphone. Hopefully I didn't screw something up. Kathy threw me a 30th surprise birthday party, and so I show up, surprise, and I look around this room of 100 people, and there were 6 factions of my life in this room. There were my business partners, my employees, my family, Kathy's family, my high school friends, and my new neighborhood friends. And I realized I was a different person with every one of those factions. And I look around. Again, you can swear when you're quoting somebody. And I look around that room and I go, who in the fuck am I going to be today? Who am I going to be today? So that was the moment I said, and so now we're talking about energy. Imagine the energy you're burning trying to be all these different things to all these different people. So from that day forward, I was one person. So that's what that one is. Number 4 is be still. Again, call it meditation, call it silence, call it what you want to call it, but take 10 to 30 minutes every day, be still, powerful for your energy. Know your 100%, and so knowing your 100% is the opposite side of taking time off, and we've indirectly touched on it a little bit, but this is much deeper in terms of figure out how many weeks you're going to work every year, how many weeks you're going to work every year, how many hours you're going to work every week. Get really clear on what I call your work container, and this isn't about taking time off. This is about figuring out your energy. I'm 40 weeks, 55 hours a week. That's my perfect energy. Any more, my energy wings. Right. Any less, I get a little bored. I need to work. So anyway, I'm going to try and get through the rest faster, and then please ask your questions. Next is say no often. Next is don't do $25 an hour work. ... if you want to make a 6-figure income. Number 8 is prepare every night, a very powerful discipline I've been doing for 25 years, and that's don't go to bed, don't let your head hit that pillow until you know exactly what you're doing tomorrow, until you've laid out tomorrow. You'll sleep better, ideas will come to you, you'll have a much more productive day. Number 9 is put everything in one place. So we entrepreneur leaders, we got a bunch of stuff going on. We're making promises, commitments, and we're doing sticky notes and stuff here and putting a note in our phone, and you're just a disaster. You're letting people down. Decide the one place you're going to put everything. You'll be more organized. You'll follow through. Again, energy will go through the roof. And then number 10, be humble. You are all out there somewhere on the spectrum of humble and arrogant, and be honest with yourself, but I promise you a humble life is much better than an arrogant life. And so that's my passionate plea, and my father-in-law, Neil Pardun, is my greatest example of humility and wealth. It's possible, and he has passed, but he changed my life because I was going down a very arrogant, negative, non-humble path in my 20s, and by his example, never said a word to me, but by his example, he taught me that the humble life is better than the arrogant life. And then, great quote, I can't remember his name either, but being humble is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. So, lovely. For what that's worth. There's energy.
Lovely. A couple follow-up questions. You've figured out your work container. How do you defend it? How do you how do you prevent it from bleeding into the other containers in your life?
But you're saying, how do what do I do if somebody tries to expand my work container? Is that what you're asking?
So the person I'd be most interested in you being able to control is you. So many of the people listening know that they'd like to work 40 weeks a year, 55 hours a week, but they won't let themselves, or they have other people picking at them for more and more of their time. What are some techniques or some strategies for getting better at really keeping your work confined to that container?
Well, here's one. It's called Stop Doing That. Okay, so, I'm a big believer in context, okay? And so what I'm doing with this book is creating context, because if you can see the context, how you do it, everybody's looking for like a technique for how to do that. But what I realize, if I can show you the context of this thing, and you give yourself permission to do it, you'll figure it out, because there's 1,800 different ways to do what you're asking. So, and again, we're talking about moving the needle, incremental steps, just be aware, start playing with some stuff. Take 3 weeks off next year. Take 4 weeks off the year after. Take 5 weeks off. You're going to get to a point where you're saying, man, this is too much time off. I figured out my perfect formula is I take 12 weeks off a year. I take the month of August off every year. I've done it for over 20 years. So I just figured out that my formula is 40 weeks a year. Anything less than that, I will go crazy with boredom. Anything more than that, I don't have enough time to do those passions and spend the time with the people that I want to spend time with. So for me, I'm fanatical. And so for me, and again, sometimes I'm oversimplifying it, but if anything tries to compete with that, it's a no.
It's a no.
Because remember, discipline number 6 is say no often.
So I was going to go there next, and I'm going to observe something about you that I think you think is natural to you, but it has always stricken me as something you're better at than the average person. When you say no, you've built a mechanism many times for giving the person who's asking you for something a yes that doesn't involve you using your time. You're better at that than anybody I've ever seen, and I've been that person in a lot of situations, podcast interviews in the early days, and so I think you stay in the yes until there's a solution that doesn't involve you spending time doing something you don't love, and that buys you the confidence to say no and say, but here's how you can get that need met that doesn't involve me.
Damn, that's pretty good. So I want to say two things, and I want to come back to that, because what's important to understand is when you live by tenure thinking you take time off, you know yourself, you be still, you know you're 100%, you say no often, you don't do $25 hour work if you want to make a six-figure income. You prepare every night. Sorry, I got to back up. When you practice tenure thinking, take time off, know thyself, be still, and know you're 100%, what to say no to is abundantly clear.
Exactly.
Abundantly clear. So I think that's the most important thing, is this awareness and moving the needle thing we're talking about, is now I know what I need to say no to. So now it's how do you say no? So I love what you said. I honestly never thought about the fact that I do so I get asked literally 1,000 times a year to do something. And I literally say no 998 of them. But you're right, I always do have a solution for them. I do have a place for them to go, a plan B, a whatever. So maybe that's a habit I developed, but nonetheless, even if I didn't, the answer is still no.
I hear you.
I love saying no. And then since we're on it, and this is one of my favorite topics, so whenever I'm doing this, teaching this with an audience, I always then have the audience look at each other and say, no, just to build the muscle. Yeah. And so there's two things. A great quote from the book Essentialism by McCowan, I think it's pronounced. Yeah. There's a quote in there, and it talks about how the mere thought of saying no to someone gives us physical discomfort. I mean, we physically get discomfort. But here's your choice. You can say no and feel that discomfort for all of 5 minutes and move on, or you can say yes and regret it for days, weeks, months and sometimes years. So that's very powerful. And then my favorite quote of all time is Warren Buffett's quote that says, the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. So I love saying no. I love when you come to me so passionate, and I'm gonna kick you in the balls, if you can say that on a podcast, and say no. Because with all due love and respect, you are not gonna mess with my life. But that's so helpful, and I will teach that forever now. I do have a habit of saying, but here's an option for you.
Yeah.
And what's ironic, and I'm realizing now how, I taught this to Kelly Knight as well, because, the 50 phone calls she gets a week with people that want to hitch their wagon to EOS, the answer is almost always no, but it's that response and that other option. They always go away feeling better, feeling good, feeling something positive.
That's right.
So that's really, right. I will teach that forever.
Well, and for me, it takes us back to the EOS, the content of the EOS Life. You can't do what you love.
I'm going to write that down. Keep talking, but I'm going to write that down.
You can't do what you love if you're not surrounded by people you love, who you have confidence can do the things that are important for your business.
Hear, hear.
And the people who want something from you. And so it comes full circle.
Yeah.
I want to go deep. We have a question from the audience, and I want to go deeper than the 10 disciplines for managing human energy, which is a good answer to this question. But Omar from Texas says, how does Gino protect his own mental health through the inevitable ups and downs of business and life? And so let's go a little deeper on the subject of mental health, because entrepreneurship and mental health challenges tend to go hand in hand. So talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, for one, I would not consider myself a mentally healthy person. So that's all relative. So again, that point about let your freak flag fly, whatever that means. So I remember I went to the Amen Clinic, which they're one of the number one clinics. They look at your brain, they see what's going on with your brain. And that's when I learned I had ADD. I never would have guessed I had ADD because I come off so focused. And so I remember you go through 2 days of testing, and then you meet with the doctor at the end, and he's looking at my results, and he goes, I think first thing he said was, I didn't expect to see so much damage, but I've taken a lot of hits to the head in my lifetime. But he also said, I see where you have built a life around your brain. So I could never be an accountant. My brain is not an accountant brain. So what does mentally stable mean? I mean, the homeless person that they say is mentally ill, sometimes they look really happy. They might be the smartest person on the planet, or whatever it is. So, who are we to judge? So I wouldn't call myself mentally healthy, but I did my 7 years of therapy in my 20s. I go back from time to time, so I work on that hard. Yeah. What do I do when I get my ass kicked, which is, every other month for the last 35 years? Sometimes I curl up in a ball for a day, I mean, it's you lick your wounds, So when I really get kicked in the ass, I go down, and I go down hard. And I'm an introvert, so I will get quiet. Extroverts will get loud. But I'll give myself the permission and the time to sulk. I always picture myself sucking my thumb in a terry cloth robe, curled up in a ball. And so it's energetically that, but that's not what's really going on. And so you just, this is life. And so I've learned to take the lumps, sit in the lumps, and I've also learned to take the big wins and keep them in their proper perspective. And so my dad says, good things happen and bad things happen, but neither last.
Yeah,
that says it all.
And woven into that story is you're not afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, 100%. There's a great book I recommend to every visionary entrepreneur called The Hypomanic Edge. Okay, and it's a powerful book on the brain, the energy of a true visionary entrepreneur. And so, this was my 20s and 30s. And so your highs are high and your lows are low because you have ADD, you are manic, and it will help you understand. And it goes through all these great visionary leaders over time, and But once you understand it, you can learn to live with it, work with it, manage it, not when you're on the down, which looks like depression, realize that this isn't depression, and I'm going to come out of it. So it took me about 20 of these, and then 20 of these that followed to realize I'm going to come out of this thing.
Yeah.
So that's just life, man. So you get knocked down, sulk. Because I think the worst thing you can do is get knocked down and go, oh, that didn't bother me at all. That's nothing. That was nothing. Because you're lying to yourself. Your guts are burning inside. So just sit with the burning. It sucks. Yeah. It hurts. And sometimes it's 5 days of burning. Sometimes it's 5 minutes of burning. But nonetheless, that's life. And so anyway, somehow that...
Yeah, and that was the second thing I wanted to say. You have, if you believe that you're going to go on an entrepreneurial journey and achieve your full potential as a human being, and you're not going to experience highs and lows and get emotional and get pissed off and get depressed and get sad, and all of those emotions are going to happen, you have to be comfortable sitting with that stuff.
Yeah, and not to go too far off on this tangent, I'm not trying to promote another book, but it's why I wrote Entrepreneurial Leap, for all those people that think they want to take an entrepreneurial leap, to help find the ones that truly are, because they're built for what you just described. Mm-hmm. And then the ones that aren't, please don't do it. I'm trying to help you avoid 10 years of misery, because it's hell if you don't have the brain for it. So you started by saying mentally healthy. I'm putting that in its proper perspective, because then there are brains that are built for being a great administrative assistant, for being an accountant, for being a cop, for being a nurse, for being in the military. And it's just, you got to figure out, your unique energy. And mine is just this crazy energy that I'm unemployable, nobody wants me, so I just had to build a company with a bunch of people around my neuroses.
By the way, my quote of the entire interview is, I didn't expect to see so much damage.
Yeah, believe me, those were his words exactly. Now, the damage wasn't terrible. I said, can you expand on that a little bit? And he said, well, if a brain is a 10, yours is about an 8. So, but I mean, we won't get into we won't get into my fighting days, but I've taken some hits to the head. In my crazy days, in my drinking days.
Okay,
so we won't get into that.
You heard it first here. Quick break before we round.
Fun drinking, not a problem drinking.
That's right.
Fun
Quick break before we round into the home stretch here. So just one last reminder for those of you who may be thinking you don't deserve to live the EOS life, you're not alone. Lots of leaders, lots of entrepreneurs feel that way, but I guarantee you do. I'm just as passionate about this as Gino is. You've invested so much in your business. You care more deeply probably in your mind than anybody else on the planet. And we believe you should get everything you want from that business. And sometimes the best way to improve your mental health and feel like you belong again is hearing from other entrepreneurs who are on this journey who have struggled with the same things. And so please consider listening to a new podcast that EOS Worldwide is launching in September, called the EOS Life. It's hosted by EOS Worldwide's visionary, Mark O'Donnell. You can find it on all the major distribution channels for podcasts or by clicking on the podcast links at www.eoslife.com. Check it out when you get a minute. It could be the very thing you need to start taking the steps on this journey to live the EOS life. So let's talk about the future. What are your hopes for this book?
Well, the hopes are that a whole bunch of people are living their ideal life. So that's a very general statement, and then I'll go a little more specific than that. I mean, I do hope it reaches millions of people. I can see we just hit 1 million copies sold of Traction, literally like this week. And I see where this could possibly do better. Who knows? And I'm not measuring that by book sales for me. It's about the people that it's impacting. So I do believe it can impact millions of people. The other thing is, if someone out there lives their ideal life I believe that they will become an example to the people around them, and we touched on that. But then that one person that they've touched goes to them and says, teach me what you know. And if that one person living their ideal life teaches one or two people, and those one or two people learn it and are the example and teach one or two people, and then those do the same and those do the same, what a world it would be. So hopefully indirectly, there's the answer to your question.
Yeah, that's perfect. Do you have any other passion projects you're currently working on or in the waiting room?
I appreciate you asking that. So I'd say two. So the one I'm smack dab in the middle of, a 10-year project, I'm 2 years into the 10 years, is Entrepreneurial Leap that I alluded to. e-leap.com if you want to find out more. But that's all about if you out there, you think you're an entrepreneur or you have someone in your life that you think is an entrepreneur. Again, that mission I described, it's helping them determine if they are and showing them the exact path for getting there, but also hopefully talking them out of it. You either have the 6 essential traits, you either score well on the assessment or you don't. And then number 2, I don't know what this is going to become, but the second one really is the reaction I'm getting from 10 disciplines. I'm going to do something with that over the next 10 years. I don't know what yet, but there's just something there. And whatever that is, it's going to be so totally different than anything I've ever done before. The way I'm going to do it, I don't know what that means, but those would be just something there. And just something is, just kind of calling me to put some energy into that. Yeah. So those would be the two. Awesome. And then other than that, half of my life is still EOS. I'm an EOS implementer. I have clients. I speak. So half of my life is still EOS, and then the other half are these other passions. At the end of the day, I'm an EOS implementer, and it's still my number one love is walking into that session room and seeing my clients' smiling faces and then kicking their ass for 8 hours.
Having been there, he is not lying about the ass kicking, just so we're clear. A great question. Isla from Arizona asks, do I have to know EOS to understand the concept of living the EOS life?
Thank you. I'm so glad that was asked. No. So the first page of the book I put in about, if you don't know EOS, you're going to be fine. It all makes sense. This is so intuitive. So I do want to say this. So thank you for that question, because no, you don't. You absolutely do not. And I do believe this content is going to find its way. When I talk about that person teaching 2 people and that person teaching 2 people, I mean, come on. So let's take a librarian. A librarian can do what they love, with people they love, make an impact, get compensated appropriately, and have time for other passions. So whatever your walk of life is, it absolutely applies. And no, you don't need to understand EOS. It's really intuitive and simple stuff.
Well, and if the EOS tools in the book are going to help you live the EOS life, you've done a fine job of explaining in a very basic sense how to use them and directing people to other resources for that. So one little passage I love in this book, because it's very similar to something we wrote at the end of Get a Grip. You say very specifically, when your leadership team meets every week, the meeting should be filled with laughter, intense debate, passionate discussion, high trust, and respect. You should look forward to working together and seeing each other.
Hallelujah.
So, a lot of people listening don't feel that way and may not even think that's possible. Give them some reason to hope that it is and start taking the first step.
I love that you went there. So I stand by that verbatim. God, that's so well written. I think it's because I have a great editor. But that is the litmus test. If you, whoever you are, the visionary, the integrator, the head of sales, the head of marketing, the head of finance, if you don't look forward to your level 10 meeting every single week, and it doesn't look like that, something ain't right. Yeah. You are not doing it with people you love, and it's time to fix that. And it might be that one leadership team member that's just a prick, or the female version of prick, okay? So, and they just need to go. It might be you. So it might be, you know what, I just don't like these people.
That's right.
Get the hell out of there, go do your thing. But that is the litmus test. In your level 10, in every level 10, there should be laughter, there should be debate, there should be arguing, there should be passion, so it should be all the emotions. And that's when you're working with a great team, making an impact on the world, doing cool stuff. That's my humble 2 cents.
And for me, I think what we're doing with the EOS Life is we're helping everybody reading this book understand that if that's where you are, you're not stuck. The question is, what are you going to do about it?
No, you're
What are you going to do about it?
Just getting started.
Yeah.
You're not stuck. You're just getting started.
That's right.
0 to 100. You're somewhere, and you just need to move the needle. Not stuck. It's just you're starting here, or you're starting here, or you're starting here.
All right. Last question.
By the way, where are you?
I'm about 22. I started at 22. I'm about 66.
66.
Yeah. I know I need to get better.
Boy.
I'm on my journey. But I feel like a champion at 66. To your point.
No, my favorite line was when we were on the phone and you said, "Oh, I can't talk on Friday because I'm about to take a 3-day sabbatical." And I said, "Paton, that is not a sabbatical. That is a vacation. As a matter of fact, it's not even a vacation. It's a long weekend, Paton. That is not a sabbatical."
And you
come a long
correctly
way.
predicted that I wouldn't not look at my phone for the weekend either.
You've come a long way, baby.
I have come a long way, and I've learned it all from you. All right. 2 last questions. First, is there a question I should have asked you because you really wanted to share something? If I didn't ask, please just share what you want to share. Good. The last question, I want you to boil all the work that went into this book down to the most powerful piece of advice you could give somebody who's not living their EOS life.
So that one is easy to me because I feel like we already said it.
Yeah.
And so I will look back into this camera. You deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve it. So that's the first step. That's the first step, is just realize you deserve it. And if you're still sitting there going, I hear what he's saying, but I still don't, go get some therapy. Go get to the root of what that thing is. Start meditating, whatever it is. But you got to clear that dark energy out of there. And then the second one we said as well, don't get overwhelmed by this. Just move the needle. I mean, what you're going to see are literally 60 different things you could do after reading this book to move the needle. Pick one, take a 10-year outlook, and 10 years from now, you'll be living your ideal life, just one step at a time. So I wouldn't add anything more than those 2 things.
Thank you.
I gave you my best shot earlier, Paton. Back off.
Well, that's good. I thought I'd give you a chance to reiterate. I know you got to hear it 7 times.
I'm with you.
So for the people watching and listening, please go live your EOS life. It is possible. I've made tremendous progress because of what you've taught me, and you've got a lot to teach the rest of the world. Thank you for being so generous with your time.
My pleasure. This was a blast.
And thank you all for watching and listening. We want you to live your EOS life.
Hallelujah.